Hi everybody, this is Blinky in the quality control section of the Crow's Nest. In the podcast you are hopefully about to listen to, if you make it to minute 34 and 16 seconds, I say that Oliver Stone was introduced by Andrew Bergman, the man who wrote The Front, the movie about the Blacklist. Well, actually, Andrew Bergman wrote, among other films, Blazing Saddles, a movie about funny cowboys. Walter Bernstein wrote The Front, and Walter Bernstein was the man who introduced Oliver Stone at the Q&A at the Time Life building in 1992. Hope you enjoy the show.
I'll say one thing. In a universe
live from high atop the fabulous Crow's Nest High Tower, somewhere between Sepulveda Boulevard and 1,000 Oaks. It's the Blinky Moskowitz Show with Blinky Moskowitz. Tonight's guests, Marvin Brando, talking Trek Talk with Gary 7 Lynch, Episode 3 of Kino X. Musical guest, Vast Wasteland. Comedian, Blackheart Larch. I'm your presenter, James I. O'Neill. And now, it is my pleasure to present that rakish raconteur, that passionate space pirate soldier of cinema, dedicated to making Homo sapiens sapiens a spacefaring species. General Blinky Moskowitz.
Thank you, Jimmy O'Neill, for that fine and distinguished, I'm not sure fully deserved introduction, but thank you very much. This is Blinky here with you, back in the Crow's Nest. This is episode 1, let's call it season 2. I was just talking to my friend Gary 7 Lynch, who should be calling us up a little bit later on in the show. He was talking a little bit about the circumstances surrounding the second season of the original Star Trek series, and in particular the episode Amok Time, which, as Gary was telling me, was not the originally the season opener. They swapped the sequence, and I believe the reason was that Leonard Nimoy's character, Mr. Spock, the Vulcanian science officer, was becoming preeminent, or something like that.
The Crow's Nest.
Houston, what you're seeing is the Western Hemisphere. Looking at the top is the North Pole. In the center, just lower to the center, is South America. And it appears now that the East Coast is cloudy. I can see clouds over parts of Mexico. The parts of Central America are clear. And we can also see the light bright spot of the subsolar point on the light side of the Earth. Okay, for colors, the waters are all a sort of a royal blue.
Eres mi tierra, una perla azul, viajante de tan belleza, dando volteretas al espacio vacío, donde hay nada, de repente allí estás. Vida en formas infinitas se arrastran a través de tu cuerpo, pero eres sola. I can't save your life, change their point of view. Can't give back what they have taken from you. Not the money machines, it's not the great men, it's not the warrior kings, it's you. Can I take with me all the memories of the life I spent upon you? See you hanging there, your sea's all out of reach. my tears could never fill you. Soy distante, silente, sin vida, pero soy bañado en su luz y por siempre he sido parte de ti. You just find a way, shrug and make it through, and your smiling beauty never fades. Even under scars and lines that form too soon, there is joy in your way. Save your life, kill your enemies, cover you with flowers, I'm so far away. Only watch you grow, knowing why you smile, knowing somehow I knew what to say. Soy distante, silente, sin vida, pero soy bañado en su luz y por siempre he sido parte de ti.
Vast Wasteland, here on the Crow's Nest with Blinky. Vast Wasteland, they are going to be in the studio later on in the show, as long as I don't go long, and we have to bump them and Blackguard Larch, but there's a good chance that they'll be... Blackguard Larch is a very funny guy, and I really want him to come on and do his tight set at some point. Anyway, Vast Wasteland, that's Blinky26, one of my clones, and also featuring Hey Lady on backing vocals. Like I said, they're in the green room right now. God knows what's going on in there. We'll be speaking to them a little later. Somewhere, we're going to nestle them somewhere between Talking Trek Talk with Gary 7 Lynch and episode 3 of Kino X. Unless, of course, Kino X gets canceled. There have been rumors running rampant around the Crow's Nest that Kino X's days may be numbered because it's anachronistic. Shit, I thought it was prescient. Anyway, this is Blinky on the Crow's Nest. Those of you who heard last week's show might have heard me give an email address several times on how to contact me with your Common Core math problems. I of course gave you the address of some guy named Sam on the iCloud. If he's getting your emails, sorry, Sam. The actual address, ready? Sam M. Saldivar at iCloud.com. No spaces, all lowercase. Send your suggestions there, and then we can do the problems. All right. Also, any other things you want to say or talk about? Any suggestions, complaints? Let me know you're out there. I've heard from a couple of great folks. I've gotten some real thoughtful messages at length, and that makes me feel good. Makes me want to continue doing it. All right. We got a great show. Got a lot of stuff for you. Who knows? It might go long today. I don't really know. But as Jimmy was so kind to call me in the intro a soldier of cinema, I don't. That's actually Werner Herzog. He calls himself a soldier of cinema. And I like that, because when asked what he meant by that, he simply said, a soldier is someone who stands his post while all the others, well, split. Stands his post. I believe that is the soldier's first general order, to stand your post until properly relieved. By way of full disclosure, in this time-space continuum, my military service is limited to 2 years junior reserve officer training in military high school. I trained on a 1903 Springfield bolt-action rifle bored out to .22 caliber, and I never made rank, and I received one citation, which was the Good Conduct Ribbon, and that was for not doing something. Anyway, I am a bit of a student of military history, though. Not because I grew up on a military post, not because I grew up on West Point, and that's actually the truth. My real interest in military history actually started in 1993 when I began doing research for an unproduced, unwritten, still, script that was going to be the unofficial sequel to Patton. I was really taken by the emphasis on Patton's metaphysical characteristics, how he thought he was the reincarnation of warriors past, and how he had vivid memories of past battles. He was this eternal spirit of war, and then romanticized that. And a lot of great mind warpers, the General Peck in particular, have taken that. Anyway, back. I wanted to make an unofficial sequel to that, where Patton is reincarnated in the future as a general who leads tanks in battle on Mars, and he does single combat, one tank against the enemy. Remember in the film Patton, he has that great bit of dialogue where he says he would like to meet Rommel out in the desert, just he and his tank and Rommel and his, and they would, I think the line is, we would button up and do battle, and that would decide the fate of the war. Well, that little moment right there really just sunk in, and I said, well, that would be a great starting point for a science fiction movie. And of course, it would be called The Fields of Mars. Champ de Mars, Fields of War, Fields of the God War. So I started doing a lot of research into, in particular, tank warfare. I bought a really great book by a historian named John Antal, and it's a choose-your-own-adventure training book for tank commanders in the Army. And I believe it was actually used by the Army to train. So I took the course, so to speak, learned how to be a tank commander. Then I started watching a lot of war movies. And then, of course, this was early 90s when the History Channel was just starting to gain momentum. And so that sort of set the wheels turning. Like I said, strangely enough, I didn't grow up a military person. I grew up kind of the opposite. A bit iconoclastic. I was more into outer space and girls and rock and roll and stuff like that. So, but I'm kind of in a movie frame of mind this week. I was going to do Blinky's movie pick, and all apologies to The Prestige, which is a film I saw for the first time last week. I'm afraid you're going to get bumped for the pick of this week, but I don't know. We can have two picks. I don't think I can talk at length about The Prestige right now because I was so overwhelmed by the film I saw last night. And this show is not sponsored by Netflix, but hey, if you'd like to throw something my way, go for it, because I'm going to keep talking about you and telling everybody how great you are. Last night I found Milius, the documentary about John Milius, the filmmaker, the writer, the director, the producer, the raconteur. I think that's why Jimmy threw that into the copy. He's trying to make up for the fact that he wasn't around all this week. I remember last week he took Sunday off. He actually just came back last night. Anyways, that's a whole different story. Now, this is my pick of the week. John Milius has, for a very, very long time, been one of my heroes. He ranks among the famous graduates of the University of Southern California Film School in the late 60s. Anyone who's studied film or has any connection in whatsoever with the pop culture knows about these men and women and knows what they created. And the world of American and maybe even world cinema that we live in today essentially was created by this group who were, in their own words, at the right place at the right time. And through the fortunes of the era, when the studios were going through great transition, they were being bought by people who didn't necessarily know how to run a studio. And at the same time, they were looking at the need to find a new market, and that's, of course, the late 60s, the beginning of the power of the youth market. And so these very young people went out into Hollywood proper, real Hollywood. This was Hollywood, the place. And they changed it forever with the films that they made. Star Wars, Apocalypse Now, The Godfather, and of course, a man who was not an alum of that school, but who was a friend of these guys. He also did quite well after surviving the gauntlet of having to make a movie about a giant shark. Of course, I'm talking about Steven Spielberg, also a contemporary from that age. Now, these men, these folks are my heroes, and they were the reason I went to film school. I guess you could call my folk the second generation. We were the ones who were 12 years old when Star Wars came out, and we were barely able to comprehend Apocalypse Now. Our intellects were not quite ready to. I think I was 20 before I could fully grasp what that film was all about. And then when I saw Hearts of Darkness, the documentary about the making of Apocalypse Now, then my understanding went up another level because I understood things about filmmaking, and I understood the scale upon which these young people were working at the time. I mean, Coppola paid off Marcos to borrow his helicopter squadrons. He had to get the helicopters from someplace, because in the mid-1970s there was no such thing as jetpack 4D turbo something or other, this thing that you download and you make airplanes fly around in 3 dimensions, actually 4 dimensions, because it's cinematic, so it goes through time, but actually Hearts of Darkness is a great film to watch in concert with the Milius documentary, because John Milius is interviewed extensively in both of them. I have a place in my heart for him. I feel like if there were a game, which American zoetrope person are you, I'm sure I would get John Milius. His particular persona, politics aside, I'm not concerned with that at all. I'm talking about the passion for cinema. I'm talking about the passion for storytelling. I'm talking about the passion to continue the line of stories. And listen, I'm stealing from him right now, because last night in the interview in one of his interviews, he was talking about his belief and his love and his dedication to the Homeric tradition of oral history, tales that are told and told until finally they end up embedded in the psyche somewhere. And of course, these are reasons why these films of the 70s did so well, because they had that depth to them. Even a film, not even Star Wars, but Star Wars is of course, has been shown to be the hero's journey. If you want to check out the fabulous series of interviews that the great Bill Moyers did with Joseph Campbell, and again, there's another tier of understanding when Bill Moyers and Joseph Campbell stepped onto the scene, to then hold that light up to these kinds of films. Then we saw that we were really dealing with something substantial. There's a quote at the beginning of the documentary. I don't know, I forget who said it, but Roosevelt, Teddy Roosevelt, of course. Something about it, you can check it out. It's on Netflix, it's streaming. It starts by saying it's not the critic that matters. And I agree to a certain extent. But if the critic is someone who is not criticizing, but is being critical, in other words, analyzing what the artist has created and shedding a new light on it, putting it into a new context and saying, this is why this is good, this is why this is valid, that's a good critic. But anyway, that's the flick to pick. And if you want to go one step further, go to Kickstarter, because John Milius's daughter, Amanda Milius, is currently finishing her Masters of Fine Art at USC. And she has a campaign on Kickstarter to do her student film. And for one thing, that's, to me, absolutely mind-boggling, to think that is what film students have at their disposal. They have crowdsourcing and crowdfunding capabilities that not only give them the opportunity to make the films that they want to make at the quality, at the level that they want to make them, but also they're learning how to produce, and they're learning how to produce in the current arena of crowdsourcing. Last year, I was lucky enough to work with a number of really great folks, and really young too, just out of film school. And their ability, I might have said this in an earlier podcast, but I was so impressed by their knowledge of the current digital equipment and their knowledge of photography and so forth, compared to what I knew when I got out of film school. I basically learned film production, the nuts and bolts of it, crew work and so forth. I basically learned that on the job after I graduated. But then I realized, well, there just wasn't that much. There wasn't as much to teach when I was there. We learned a lot of theory, but then the fundamentals were literally cutting and splicing. Cutting and splicing on reversal film. We didn't even shoot negative. But anyway, that's the difference, and it just makes me incredibly excited to see what this next generation of filmmakers is going to produce, because their level of quality, they're not starting. James Cameron's first screenplay was Piranha 2: The Spawning, which, by the way, that's a really well-written, tight screenplay with a strong female lead. It's excellent. But think about it. He had to go to Roger Corman and write a movie about flying, killing killer fish. Whereas folks today, they can write what they want, and they can put it out there, and they can say, this is the film I want to make. Help me make it, and it can be this good. It's amazing. The film is called The Lotus Gun, and it's on Kickstarter. And again, the name is Amanda Milius, and that's my pick for the week. This is the grand tradition, started in the late 1960s, and it continues to this day, and it makes me very, very proud. Very proud to be a former film student and graduate of the program of cinema at the State University of New York at Binghamton. That's right. Which existed, by the way. That's one thing they were talking about in the film last night. saying that in the late 1960s there were only really 3 film schools of any import, that being New York University, USC, and UCLA, University of California, Los Angeles, and Westwood, where Coppola went. I'd like to check into that, though, because I'm not sure when the Harper College Cinema Department was founded at SUNY Binghamton. It may have been in 1968, because I think that's when those guys started teaching there. I've got to check on that, though, and I'll get back to you. Right now, though, a little music. This is Red Felt Heart with a track called Apple. This is based on an episode of Star Trek, the original series, soon to be an epic music video, directed by the great music video director, some guy named Sam. Here in the Crow's Nest, Red Felt Heart.
Akuta is the leader of the feeders of Val. Herculean innocence, he's hung very well. Akuta is the leader of the feeders of Val. Herculean innocence, he's hung very well. Val controls the planet through his bottomless hunger, imposing loss and lack of love for all who are under. Val controls the planet through his bottomless hunger, imposing loss and lack of love for all who are under. Akuta, he is brave. Akuta, he's the change. Akuta, he is strong. Akuta, why'd you wait so long? Val suppressed his people, but now Val is no more. Akuta sent him sinking into the earthen floor. Val suppressed his people, but now Val is no more. Akuta sent him sinking into the earthen floor. Akuta was the leader of the feeders of Val. Only one he answers to is himself now. Akuta was the leader of the feeders of Val. The only one he answers to is himself now. Akuta, he is brave. Akuta, he's the change. Akuta, he is strong. Akuta, why'd you wait so long?
Blinky with you here in the Crow's Nest, Red Felt Heart, Apple, the story of Akuta. Any fan of the original Star Trek, of course, remembers the second season episode, The Apple, where Captain James T.Kirk violates the Prime Directive for, if not the first time, then not the last time. But that's okay. James T.Kirk is a fictional character on an episodic television series in the late 1960s. He only exists in our hearts and minds and imaginations. The planet was Gamma Trianguli 6. Strangely tropical even at the poles, suggesting something unnatural at work to begin with. It's also a great episode if you are lovers of the Scotty, you got to fix the engines or we're all going to die. I'm not going to give it away if you haven't seen it, but there's some great Kirk to Scott sort of thing. And it's also notoriously an episode notoriously hazardous and deadly to the guys wearing the red shirts. Anyway, we're going to go with some more Red Felt Heart now. This is Ode to Grey Gardens. More about the Apple video later.
Gently lying, watch it flying and goodbye. All life's riches turn to ashes, even young and smoky lasses. Singing, dancing, make romance when you're presented with the chance. Life is fleeting, gently lying, watch it flying and goodbye. See how it flies. I will find you in the meadow. I will meet you at the ocean. I will feel you dancing always. I will see you in the garden. With your scarf and your skirt and your cape on, with your dreams and your chance of romance gone, with your youth and your bloom and your suitors gone, with your light and your love and your hope on, with your fur and your jewels and your cool on, with your cats and your rats and your bats gone, with your house and your weeds and your garden gone, with your light and your love and your hope on. Life is fleeting, gently lying, watch it flying and goodbye. All life's riches turn to ashes, even young and smoky lasses. Singing, dancing, make romance when you're presented with the chance. Life is fleeting, gently lying, watch it flying and goodbye. See how it flies. We've
Short trip to Grey Gardens, just a chicken on Big Edie and Little Edie. I was thinking, this being a Cinema Sunday, I remember back in, I think it was the beginning of 1992, at the Time Life building in New York, Oliver Stone held an open Q&A. He was introduced by Andrew Bergman, the screenwriter who wrote, among other things, The Front, a film about the Blacklist, starring Woody Allen. Bergman introduced Stone by saying, I'd like to introduce a man who's not a politician, but he makes political films, Oliver Stone. And this, of course, was not long after JFK. It was around the same time that Stone's film JFK came out. So a lot of and also this is 1992, so media was just beginning its transformation. And Oliver Stone, and the questions led towards his obvious and blatant manipulation of reality with his particular filmmaking style. If you remember, JFK used a lot of mixed formats, film formats. Some scenes were in black and white, the color balance was different, the editing was radical, a lot of it was told in flashback, hearsay, etc. It's quite an extraordinary film. I'm not sure it answers any questions, and I'm not sure it's supposed to. But at the time, he was becoming a champion of that kind of, let's just call it, ironically, let's call it manipulative filmmaking. I mean, obviously, cinema, all of it is manipulative. You go and you agree to be manipulated. You agree to believe that what you're seeing bouncing off the screen in front of you and what you hear coming out of the speakers combined creates a fourth dimensional experience. So, but let's say manipulative because it deliberately tries, in an Eisensteinian way, let's say, to guide the viewer's belief system, to guide the viewer's perceptions down a certain path, right? Well, this was an interesting discussion, but at some point during the question and answer session, which was made up mostly of young people. At the time, I think I was 27, and a lot of the people in the room were my age or younger. But at one point, a man, an older man, in his, at least in his 70s, a very soft-spoken man, stood up and introduced himself, and he said, "Mr. Stone, I'm a filmmaker as well. And my name is Albert Maysles." Now, forgive yourself if you haven't heard of him, because nowadays, in modern times, you've got the internet, so you can just find out instantly. Back then, I was shocked to see a room full of young people there to see Oliver Stone, who had never heard of Albert Maysles, who, of course, is one of the Maysles brothers, who were great documentary filmmakers, contemporaries of D.A. Pennebaker, contemporaries of the young filmmakers coming out of SC, so forth. But they made documentaries, and they made very straightforward, clean. They had an amazing ability to kind of become part of the world of the subject and then sort of blend in and allow the subject of the documentary to be honest on camera. And that's, I believe, a rare gift. And of course, in this moment, this is where the conversation went at this time, because what I was privileged to witness in the ensuing minutes after Albert Maysles introduced himself was basically a clash of titans. It was a very respectful conversation. Oliver Stone, the first thing he said when he responded was, I know who you are, sir. I'm a great admirer of your work. But Maysles took the position that too much manipulation, too much editing, too much guidance of the viewer down a path is not the essence of at least the kind of cinema that he professed. And of course, the Maysles style is to be virtually non-existent as the filmmaker, to simply be there as the recording medium, to be an eye and an ear and a willing subject acts in front of it as they would act normally. It was an astonishing moment, though. I wish I could have recorded it, because both sides had valid points. I do remember, though, at one point Oliver Stone got the crowd behind him. Maisels made a comment that could have been interpreted as saying that younger people, or that viewers in general, aren't as sophisticated as perhaps they might need to be to fully appreciate what Stone was trying to do. And of course, Stone sees that opportunity to look around the room and say, well, I think these people are very intelligent. I think this generation is very astute. We've got a round of applause and that sort of thing. All right. Let's see. Okay. We're back. This is Blinky and the Crow's Nest. I'm here with Gary Seven Lynch, one of the world's top experts on Star Trek, and he's going to be talking to us today about Amok Time. Take it away, Gary. What was significant about this episode, as far as being the first episode of season 2 of Star Trek: The Original Series?
Oh, hi, Gary.
Hello. Hey, you there, Gary? Yeah.
I don't think I can play, Gary. I don't think I have the expertise, man.
Oh, you can play, Gary. No problem, man. Give it. No, you were. It was it's sort of a landmark episode written by Theodore Sturgeon. Introduced some classic elements as the Vulcan plomeek soup, the plaque tau, the blood fever. But tell us a little bit about the backstage intrigue that went on between the producers and the rising competition between Shatner and. This isn't Gary, is it? Who am I talking to? Is this John Knowles? Is this John Knowles? Are you trying to disguise yourself? Hello.
This is not John Knowles.
Okay. Wow. All right. Well, listen. What are you an expert at, and who the hell are you? Wait. Alan. What's going on?
Oh, I'm just a bitter, angry individual.
Oh, okay.
Just got through murdering a plant.
Well, they grow back.
This one won't.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry to hear that. Okay, well, all right. I guess we're not going to do Trek Talk with Gary Seven Lynch this week. But if you'd like, we could talk about the advancements of fourth dimensional. What? Wow. So, all right.
I got nothing for you, man.
Thanks. All right. Thanks. Whatchamacallit? He's been reading a couple of books that are about the backstage history of Star Trek. So he's really been doing a lot of comprehensive research, and we had a great conversation on the phone yesterday, except he always calls me from the car, and there's like a beep every 5 seconds. It goes bleep bleep, like he's in a walkie-talkie or something. So I'm like, all right, call me tomorrow. But of course, I haven't heard from him. But whatever. But I'm winding up. I got my show done. All I have left to do is I have to interview the band Vast Wasteland, and then what the hell? There's more beeping. Now Gary's calling me. Oh shit.
You want to call me back?
Yeah, I'll call you back. Hello. Come in, please. Hello. Anybody there? We're having technical difficulties. Hey. Machu Picchu. Popocatépetl. This is Binky and the Closed Nest. All right, here we go. Ready? This is techno. Sergeant Lynch. What? Hey, man.
Hey.
All right.
For the delay. Just taking care of some stuff with Mia.
Oh, no worries, man. I'm glad you called because I dialed the wrong number. I called up Alan and I started asking him questions about amok time, and he didn't know what the hell I was talking about. So you called in the middle. You called in the middle of our phone conversation. I'm like, I gotta go. The expert's here. All right. Listen, man, you're live. You're live and on the air in the Crow's Nest. This is Blinky. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to introduce to the Crow's Nest on this Sunday the world's foremost expert on Star Trek, the original series, Sergeant Gary Lynch. Hey, man.
Well, thanks, Blinky. You know, I thought I was the foremost expert for years. Years and years, meaning decades going back to when I first started watching Star Trek on my grandmother's TV, first episode being Obsession, which, of course, would come to paint my own journey with Star Trek, oddly enough.
That's a nice one to start with.
Say again?
I said that's a nice one to start with.
Yeah.
Captain Kirk driven to break the back of his horse to catch the bad guy.
And like most fans, I thought I heard it all. I read books along the way, The Making of Star Trek, The World of Star Trek, interviews on different channels, or back in the day, Starlog and such. All these quasi, authoritative sources, and it all put forth this legend of the little series that tried, right, and the little series that could only make it 3 seasons and was a cheap production, cheap sets, and wooden acting and such. All those endearing things that we all loved about its legend, and things are said that we accept about Star Trek, and why not? It was a low-rated show. The network wasn't happy with it, and that contributed to its downfall. And so, all these things we learn ourselves and share as fans and trekkers. And then I, last year happened upon this book called These Are the Voyages, and it's season 1. So, but get to that in a minute. By a fellow named Mark Cushman. And so, what sets this apart from the thousands of things that have been written in the past about it before? Well, here's what sets it apart. First, it's probably the first book that really goes into the facts in the archives. Everything else we have, actors, writers, producers, all recanting their whatever sketchy memory they have of a show from the late '60s, and as we all know, and as years pass, we quickly forget all of the facts. And what are the facts? Well, it turns out that Roddenberry and Gene Roddenberry and the associate producer Robert Justman, they kept a wealth of memos and legal documents, production diaries, the whole end to end, every episode, from the cage to Turnabout Intruder. You have left in Roddenberry's possession all of these story outlines becoming the script becoming the pre-production becoming the production, the post-production, and it's like taking the making of Star Trek and taking it to taking it 30 times that. And what was done with all of these production artifacts was that they were Roddenberry had kept them for a number of years, mainly because he felt that in case there was any legal action he had to take between Paramount over royalty disputes or writers quarreling over their credit, like Harlan Ellison over City of Adventure Forever, that these documents were needing to be preserved, and ultimately, after having 3 years worth of documents and keeping them for several years past Star Trek's cancellation, he gifted them to the UCLA libraries, which apparently is a thing to do with television producers that are proud of their product. They eventually will it over to UCLA for posterity. So in the early 80s, Roddenberry, after being demoted from the motion picture producer status to being a producer to an executive consultant, and still kind of smarting over that, started feeling there was the story that needed to be told, but it was a long story that needed to be told, and he looked to get some help on it, and enlisted this fellow by the name of Mark Cushman, who went to the UCLA library and took a look at all this stuff and said, "Christ, it's going to take a long time to sort through." And it took him the better part of 2 decades worth of attempts at coming up with how do I tell this story, because he was first trying to tell this massive story in one book, and ultimately to do it justice, he said, "No, I've got to each season has to be its own book of getting into the whole backstory." And so that's what he set out to do. So, without Paramount's permission, without any other permission, just using the journalistic license of investigative reporting, as he called it, he put together Roddenberry's notes, Bob Justman's notes, and it's very surprising that's how much of a value shifts it causes the reader. I mean, my wife hates it. Jessie Blinky, she hates it, by the way, because she thought I was just about finished salivating over Star Trek. I'd shown her all the movies, I'd shown her as many episodes as she could stand, and she thought, for God's sakes, is this it? and lo and behold, I ordered this book, and now she sees me after finishing season 1. Now on season 2, she sees me once again obsessed, reading every episode, the whole backstory, all the tidbits, and blocking out the rest of the world in the process. So I hope I finish season 3 soon, or she's going to become the plaintiff.
Well, then that would make you one person who would be happy that the original series got canceled after 3 seasons.
Well,
if it had gone on as long as MASH, dude, you'd be in trouble.
In some ways, the world did it a favor by canceling it after 3 seasons. And
it planted a seed, Gary.
What's that?
It planted a seed.
Exactly, and had it gone on for 7 years, like Bonanza or any of those other shows that did something to that, people would have had they're feel of it, and that would have been it, right? So we enjoy the what ifs. So the things that don't make their realization, they don't have their ending, and so that was one appeal of Star Trek. The series that can only make it to 80 episodes, and that's a bit age, 79 or 80, that's my preamble, Blinky, about the book. I mean, it's I'll share though that some of the insights that it gives is that Star Trek was not the ratings loser that Miss had put forth. The Nielsen ratings that we see common enough every day these days, and for the past 30 or so years, those are very commonly, you see every show that's out there, all 120 of them, and see their ranking. That wasn't as common for folks to see back in the 60s. They might have seen the top 10, the top 20 here and there, but mostly the top 10. But really much beyond that. And it turns out that the Star Trek for its first couple of years was actually in either the top 20 or just below that. It wasn't the dismal ratings failure that folks had.
What did you tell me about Kodak? Was it called Kodak or Polaroid? About the connection between Star Trek and color television.
Well, there were a lot of interesting things about RCA and NBC as far as shows like Star Trek helped sell TV sets, of course. And
didn't the vibrancy of the show's art direction, the primary colors, the bright colors? You told me this once, I thought.
Well, that made the folks like RCA extremely happy to have the primary colors of red, yellow, and blue.
The first thing I ever saw on a color television in my life, we bought our first color TV in the early 70s. Jerry Anderson's series UFO came to CBS from England, and do you remember all the women, all the female crewmen on the moon base wore purple wigs?
And they wore them well.
They sure did, man. In the far future, set in the year 1980, on Moonbase. That's the first thing I ever saw in color television. And a lot of folks, they still then had black and white. One of the production folks in Star Trek, as they were shooting episodes, they would try to guess as how it would play across on the black and white as well as color, just so they could kind of appease both sides there. But yeah, Star Trek was not the rating loser that folks would had thought. But even in the dark on that were the stars, Shatner and Nimoy, and part of that was back especially back then, as the book explains, networks weren't as incented to let these shows know how popular they were, because obviously the more popular you are, the more money you're going to demand. Yeah, you don't want to.
Production budgets.
Yeah, you don't want to tell your actors how well they're doing, otherwise they're going to come home to roost. kind of like
Right.
what happened.
Well,
Listen, man, I hate to interrupt,
there was no
but
hiding
this
that.
is actually all the time I've got. I'm kind of winding down, but next time on Trek Talk, man, let's talk about the favored nations, man. Let's talk about Nimoy and Shatner and the money game on Star Trek. You want to do that?
Yeah. Absolutely. It's quite the exchange between the two, and
Another clash of the Titans.
I'll just leave you with this one thing about it had gotten such to the point that Nimoy was about to be written out of the show, and Roddenberry had selected 2 actors to take his place. One of them being
Lawrence Montaigne, perhaps?
and
The man who played Stan? I did my research before the show. All right, man. Hey, listen, gotta run. I hear little baby Mia in the background, man. So you don't have to hang up yet, but I'm just gonna sign off.
Yeah.
This has been Talking Trek Talk with Gary Seven Lynch, here on the Crow's Nest. All right.
All right, Blinky. Cheers. Talk to you soon.
Hey, man, you don't have to hang up yet. I just signed off for the show. Oh, okay. Well, he hang up anyway. He hang up anyway.
This is Jimmy O'Neill, the Crow's Nest. I'd like to apologise to Marvin Brando and comedian Blackard Larch, and hope they'll come back to the show another time.
What are you talking about? I got bumped again? You're an assassin. Nah, you're neither. You're an errand boy. Senpai. Wait, I got better dialogue. Do you know what it is, Willard, to be a white man who can summon fire?
This episode is dedicated to John Milius. This is Blinky. Apologies to Vast Wasteland. We gotta call him back another time. Oh yeah. Kino X got canceled.